So we're going to keep everything moving forward. Thank you all so much, of course, for being here so far with us and checking out all of these amazing sessions. The next session is going to be a panel. And to introduce to you the rest of the panel, I would like to bring up on stage Patrick Witham. Patrick is the Director of UA at Postmates. He's going to be talking about UA from scratch. Everything you need to know to grow efficiently and effectively. Yes, yet another very long speech title, but we like long speech titles. So, without further ado, Patrick Witham, please give him a round of applause.
Yeah. Thanks. I put it on, and when I put it on, I was like, I know I need to do this, and then I got ready.
Hi everyone. Thanks for coming today. We're going to be talking about UA from scratch. The mobile advertising space has been growing rapidly over the past decade. eMarketer estimates it to be an $83 billion revenue industry this year and grow to $129 billion by the year 2021. And our distinguished panelists will be talking about how to navigate the nefarious waters of buying users. So I'd like to take the time to introduce our panelists. Let's start with Brian from Consumer Acquisition. Please welcome to the stage. We also have AJ from TextNow. Mark from Tally. DM from Top Hatter. And Scott from Canvas. All right, so let's get started.
I'll sit over here.
Oh, OK. Yeah, don't want to sit alone. Let's get started. What tools and partners would you consider must-haves when building out a UA strategy for your website or application? AJ, let's start with you.
Sure. So what tools, it sort of helped to understand sort of what our stack is. So actually, let me start with what TextNow is. How many of you guys are familiar with TextNow? You guys are? That's good. So we think of ourselves as a communication as a service business, and we have 3 tiers to our product. In terms of tools that I would use for sort of user acquisition, our stack works like we have Adjust for the attribution piece. We have Tenjin for sort of spend automation. We have our own in-house analytics with Firehose data going into Redshift, and then summary tables in SQL. And then on top of that, we've built our sort of own LTV model. All of that encompasses itself into sort of a global performance marketing dashboard that our UA managers look at daily to sort of optimize campaigns. But one new tool that I've come across that I wanted to share was a tool called AppFollow. We pay $12 a month for that tool. And what that basically does is it lets you see ASO stats. So it gives you your keyword ranking, how you're doing on specific keywords, your ranking in specific categories, as well as reviews. And you can easily point that to a Slack channel. So you can just monitor a Slack channel and see after launch how your sort of product is performing.
Great. I've never heard of AppFollow, so I'll have to look into that. How about Scott? Do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah. So I'm from Canvas. We have a pretty long funnel when it comes to user acquisition. Particularly, you're getting a car through Canvas, so it's a subscription alternative to car ownership. And what that means for us is some of the more important things are really on, two fronts. I mean, really, it's the same for everybody, in my opinion. But there's the just user journey measurement and how do people interact with your website and then your app, and then separately, just in general, setting up these sort of connections between all of your other tools that you're using. We use Segment as our sort of analytics API. I know mParticle is also another one out there, and a variety of other platforms offer similar integrations. But for us, I think that was first and foremost how we set up our events infrastructure, and just even being able to track things and send those events across all sorts of tools you might end up using. That was incredibly important. And then just on the analytics front and user journey front, I think having a series of analytics tools that they overlap at times, but from Google Analytics to Mixpanel to Adjust to everybody that you could put under the sun, whatever makes the most sense for you, having a suite of some of those to evaluate the user journey is something that I think is core to launching a product especially. So measuring those things in the first place and then being able to visualize those, that's the core to what we have sort of launched with.
Cool. And Brian.
Hey, I'm Brian Bowman with Consumer Acquisition. We're a Facebook and Instagram marketing partner, so my views are kind of skewed through that. I think there's tremendous value in using a marketing partner bid management tool, could be ours or others. It really helps you micro-analyze bids, budgets, and pause rules, which just falls straight to net profit. One of the things that Lee mentioned from Google is there's never enough creative. Could not agree more with that comment. So I think the concept of a creative marketplace or a crowdsourced creative solution really helps offload the creative development from overburdened internal teams. So I think that's often helpful. And then, of course, mobile measurement partners and a BI stack. I thought the last presentation was really thoughtful in terms of the way that they've approached the problem. It shows the complexity of what goes into LTV management.
Yeah, definitely setting that up kind of, end to end is not an easy thing to do. Some of you guys have been involved in launching a new product or a new website. How do you, Mark, how would you determine your KPIs before launching a product?
That's a good question. So my name is Mark Pallin. I'm the head of growth at Tally. Just to give you some context, we're in the fintech space, and our app pays and organizes your credit cards for you. So if any of you have credit cards, go ahead and check us out after this. So determining KPIs was super important for us, and it was really kind of a company-wide process before we launched. So we launched publicly about 4 months ago. We were in closed beta for about 9 months before that, so we had the opportunity to get some data at limited scale. And as we sort of were drawing down from our wait list, we were constantly brainstorming kind of what was going to be the unifying KPI, what should really drive all of our product decisions, and how does that funnel back into growth. And so after looking at our funnel, we have a pretty long funnel as well, kind of similar to Scott. We came up with one kind of guiding KPI for us that would really focus the entire company. And that for us is, are people paying us back, and how quickly are they paying us back, and how quickly are they decreasing their debt? So part of Tally is we help manage people's credit card debts for them. The reason that's really powerful for us is because A, it creates a lot of empathy with the user, which is very important for us, but B, it really funnels back into all of our growth metrics, because for us, a good product experience and having people actually make progress against their debt actually goes back into payback period for us, goes into conversion for us. And so it boils all the way up through my job is growth, but also through our product decisioning, our engineering decisioning, and it really helps us focus as a company. As a young company, focus is super, super important. We can't do everything. We were 7 people when I started. We're 20 people now, thanks to our awesome recruiter who's right there. But still, with that small of a team, you have to really focus on what's important. So.
Great. Scott, what's been your experience at Canvas?
So similar, yeah, a lot of the similar challenges I think that Mark just outlined. Really the way we looked at it is once you are reaching, call it the end of your product development cycle, and we were getting ready to launch, we're sitting down with the engineering team trying to figure out what are all the events that we're tracking and where and why, and do we want to track it in certain ways, what properties are we passing. As you go through that process, I think you need to take a step back as well and sort of say, all right, what's the ultimate goal, similar to Mark's point earlier on the payback period there, just how quickly someone pays you back. For us, it's, all right, getting someone into a vehicle, let's break down the friction points that could arise in that process. So for us, did someone even click on a car in our inventory? Did they start the checkout process? Did they give us their driver's license? Did they pass the credit check? There's all these sort of friction points you can identify. And then it's really, I think, thinking high level, what are the core goals and metrics you need to evaluate, and then taking it and breaking it down into those friction points and saying, all right, these are the things we're going to monitor, and then sort of taking a pulse and saying, are these things actually telling us the answers that we need to have to make decisions as we test and iterate?
Great. In the mobile advertising world, Facebook and Google definitely have the lion's share of revenue and targeting options. But which advertising partners outside of Facebook and Google would you consider testing with an initial launch of the product? DM, let's start with you. No?
So I just project my voice. So I work at Top Hatter. We're a mobile shopping marketplace, and just to give you guys an idea, we sell categories from electronics, apparel, jewelry, beauty across 15 million different shoppers, and we do it within like a 90-second auction. So it's very fast-paced. The ecosystem is like we have to get users in and users buy within that 90 seconds. And so the premise of that. And in terms of our marketing strategy outside of Facebook and Google, we oftentimes love to scour new networks that we can potentially grow into a similar platform like Google and Facebook. And so for us, we evaluate our network very, very carefully. We want to understand where our users are coming from. In order for them to be able to work with us, we have to understand like the transparency, like exactly the publishers that they're sending our users from. And then in addition to that, we typically want to get a user that is, of course, high performing. And so the initial start of scouring these type of networks is asking them, can you do a CPA model buy? Where, for us, it's like cost of first purchase, or, for gaming, retention, et cetera. If a network is able to do that and show that they can perform, then, the next step would be open up to CPI buy, open it up to even a CPC. And so for us, we want to prove out that they can work even at a small budget, and then we'll scale with them. And for us, we allow any network that passes all these requirements. For us, it's good to test. You never know what you can find. There's just so many networks out there, and testing is key. And sometimes the rate of pausing and like stop working with a network is very fast-paced for us. It's just if you can prove your performance, then we'll try to scale you.
Just follow-up question. How many partners really go for a CPA campaign as an initial test buy?
Surprisingly, a lot. If you can promise them that if you can prove this out, then we'll spend X amount with you.
Yeah. Well, definitely mitigates your risk then.
Exactly.
AJ, what about you?
Yeah, so I agree with what DM said. I think we also look forward to working with a variety of ad networks, which many people have not heard of, because we want to diversify the source of where we are getting our traffic from. But two big ones that we've been testing out recently are Snapchat and Apple Search Ads. Apple Search Ads is basically similar to sort of UAC, but for within the iTunes Search Console. We're getting really good CPIs with that, and I think it's a really good way to scale our iOS business. Snapchat, what we are seeing through our initial testing is the cost of acquisition is pretty high, and the UI UX is still sort of in the beta phases, so they're still getting their act together. They need to sort of follow the best practices that Facebook and Google have already sort of learned over the last few years and sort of just implement that. Just copy it and just build it on Snapchat, and I think it'll make more sense. But those two are the big ones.
Got it. Scott?
Honestly, for us, I think that there's so many things that you can do now on both the core platforms of Facebook and Google that there are many things that I just never considered as an actual opportunity that now we're investing in. I mean, I think video is proving to be something that we're getting a little bit more innovative around, beyond just stories, but also in organic content as well, and the ability to poll people and engage with individuals. But outside of those core platforms, some of the ones that we're really looking into, we're obviously looking for scale, is some of these content distribution platforms. When you have a product that's tough to explain, I'm sure Mark, you have a similar challenge here. You have to be able to obviously tell a long story. You want rich content. That's a big part of what we try to seek in the platforms we explore. Outbrain, Taboola, those types of platforms. Cool.
Obviously, I have to spend some time talking about one of the big guys in the advertising world. And so, shifting to Facebook, the targeting options on Facebook, seem to be growing every quarter. Brian, since this is kind of in your wheelhouse, what type of strategies and targeting options are you seeing successful for you guys?
If you don't mind, I'm going to roll back just to the last question and lead into this. We have the advantage of working with some of the largest spenders in Facebook, so they're in the mid 7 figures per month across gaming, e-commerce, financial services. I would say on the high end, those guys at the very top are probably spending 60% of their budget on Facebook and then spread across the other channels. Google, and then a little bit on Apple, and virtually small on Snapchat, Pinterest, and Twitter. The reason is lookalike audiences have done a phenomenal job, especially over the course of the last 9 months in Facebook, where they've moved from, say, pure install bidding, then to purchases, and now they're going into value-based bidding. There's reticence from some publishers to share that level of data with Facebook. I would highly encourage you to test it. The immediate lift from value-based bidding is pretty substantial. It's 10 to 20% kind of net profit to the bottom line. You are exposing more information, but the value in doing that means you're bidding for what you actually care about. Not the purchaser, but the whale or the dolphin or the minnow, and then you set up your bids accordingly. So it's a really interesting way of kind of pushing forward the true value that you're going to get from the acquisition. Outside of that, I'd say it's probably 85% of people's portfolio is lookalike audiences. There's some small percent that is interests and behaviors, but a vast majority of them are being done with lookalikes. And the last thing I'd say is they're just bringing out Facebook Insights through the API, which really allows you to do demographic and psychographic targeting in a mature way. The value of starting and maturing your UA portfolio on Facebook is that once you understand the demographics and psychographics and age and gender targets along with creative, you can then roll into a DSP infrastructure very efficiently, which will allow you to kind of eliminate the non-converting spend of creative and really accelerate the spend.
Great. DM, what are you seeing at Top Hider?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Brian where, for us, lookalikes has been working relatively well. Actually, we've been scaling a lot with our lookalikes, and it's typically around that 10% lookalike that does really well for us, whereas when we tried a 1% or even up to 20, if you're part of the Facebook, if they allow you to have 20%. For us, it's like that 10% lookalike that does really well, and in addition to that, what we noticed that do really well is our dynamic custom audience, where Facebook basically gather these new users that eventually make a purchase, and then they create a lookalike based on those dynamic audience. And so we're continuously getting more and more new users that are very similar to the users that are making a purchase or doing some sort of action within your app that you determine as one of your KPIs. And I think for us, in an e-commerce perspective, that has been working relatively well. And in addition to lookalikes, we do run across all of Facebook just to gather a broader audience, and then being able to find exactly the different demographics, because Facebook has this analytical product that you can use to determine which users are high quality, et cetera. And so being able to cast a broad net, you can determine whether or not this audience might be good that you hadn't known before. And so yeah, that's one of the things that we oftentimes do is constantly checking out, seeing our demographic changes with the ecosystem within our product.
Great. And Mark?
Somewhat similar to what other people have said, lookalikes are obviously a great way to go. For us, when we came out of beta, we had tens of users. So lookalikes weren't really a great option for us to start with, so we had to get fairly creative with how we target and find people on Facebook. There's also no explicit way to target the type of user that I'm looking for. So a couple strategies that have worked pretty well. Bidding for down funnel events. It kind of goes back into the KPI conversation. For us, down funnel events are not super frequent. You need probably 10 per ad per day for it to work well. That's like the very bare minimum. In reality, you're competing against a lot of gaming companies that have thousands of events per day. They're also gaming events. So finding upper funnel metrics that are highly correlated to quality users down funnel is really important. We found an event towards the top of our funnel that is a really good indicator of what the quality of the user is going to be, and so bidding for that event has helped us a lot. The other thing is it's not so much really a targeting or bidding thing, but creative and messaging testing has by far made the biggest impact for us. And really thinking about the type, not just like the actual words that are in the message, but the actual medium of the message. So whether it's a video and then follow up later with a text-based ad, or strategies like that have been really important for us, because product education and product explanation, you need to very quickly explain what the app is, and then we ask you for every one of your credit card information, your social security number, your bank account number, a soft credit check, a hard credit, yeah. So there's a lot of trust that we have to build, and so figuring out creative ways to do that through messaging has been really important for us.
Great, and piggybacking off of that, how much time and effort are you really investing in building out creative strategy, like on every platform, not just Facebook or Google?
Yeah, so creative and messaging is probably where I spend most of my time currently. When launching out of beta, we had an idea of who our users were going to be, but we also had a pretty good understanding of a lot of them came from funding announcements. There were a lot of engineers in Silicon Valley, which is not really what our core target demographic is going to be over time. So as we kind of got out of that echo chamber and into like the real scaling phase of the company, creative testing has been super, super important.
Yeah. Brian, you have to be doing a lot of testing for some of the big companies you're working with. How much time are you guys investing in that?
Yeah, so let me frame it like this. In addition to managed services and self-service, we built a creative marketplace. And the idea is we have video editors, captive video editors and designers around the world. We spent about a year developing that. And the reason we did is because Facebook and Google have done a tremendous job over the course of the last 18 months improving their optimization algorithms, machine learning. At the end of the day, we believe creative is going to be the differentiator. What we see for our mobile apps and lead gen companies who are kind of mid or high velocity, meaning they're spending more than $50,000 a month, about 95% of the time creative is going to fail. It doesn't beat your portfolio winner. So you have to throw an awful lot into the top of the funnel in order to get out winners. And when you're doing that with videos, it gets very time consuming and very expensive. So a huge amount of effort has to go into video testing in order to sustain profitable scale. Otherwise, your ads are going to fatigue as you try and increment up reach. So an awful lot.
An awful lot. DM, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we outsource our creatives for the most part. For e-commerce, the main feature of that is the product itself, like what you're selling on your app, right? And so there's like jewelries, electronics, et cetera. And so for us, that works really well is having the carousel units that that shows all the products that this users might potentially want to buy. And with Facebook, they provide this option where you can do the DPA, where they show products to users that Facebook think will like that particular product. And in addition to that, we do a lot of video where we show products where people are actually using it, and being able to identify how the product is being used is very enticing to our users, and that created a really high click-through rate, as well as down the funnel, our CPAs are looking a lot healthier, just that alone. And I wanted to add to the point where, like, for our Facebook strategy, we invest a lot of our engineer resources towards making Facebook a lot more efficient in terms of creating new ads and optimizing or like just pulling the data and seeing which ads are doing well or not. And what we do is, we built like this campaign thing that basically changes the budget on like an hourly basis without us having to actually look at the data every single hour, and pulling it and like matching the data. So it's very efficient. It does a job for us, so we don't necessarily have to monitor it every single hour, and it just does it by itself, and it optimizes towards the best creative, towards the best CPA, et cetera.
Great. So our final question this morning, you've done your research, you have your UA strategy, all lined out. You're spending a little bit of money towards your product. What comes next? What's your primary focus, AJ?
It reminds me of a famous sort of Edwards Deming quote. It says, "In God we trust, everybody else must bring data." So I think once you've launched, it's all about sort of sitting with the product team, sitting with the data team, sort of looking at early launch data, everything, user funnel, user retention, what early LTV reads look like, how is the campaign performing, sort of see. You obviously have to scrub the data as well. Data, whenever you do a new product launch, as you guys all must have run through, there is a lot of cleaning up of the data that's required, fine-tuning of the analytics. So we'd sort of focus on that. And then the one motto that I have with the team is, test, measure, rinse, repeat. So we continuously keep doing that in growth. So we run another A/B test. We try a new store listing, and we sort of continue to sort of improve our product that way.
Great. What have you experienced, Brian?
Yeah, so I think to highlight what you're talking about and part of the show, it's really important to map the MMP data back to Facebook original data. You should push for no more than a 5% gap between the install rate of Adjust and the install rate of Facebook and the measurement, the revenues, et cetera. Once you get the install flowing and the revenue events flowing, you have to actually go back and remap to ROAS to make sure that that flows all the way through. And the other thing I would encourage everyone to think about is with every app update that you do, go back and redo that process. It's a pain, but you'd be stunned how many times the revenue funnel gets broken when it wasn't supposed to during an app update. And the last thing I would say is optimization of app stores and or websites, depending on which business you're running, probably has a lockup of 30 to 50% of your net profit. So focusing an engineer dedicated to an optimized lease type solution or an app store initiative will really pull out that kind of stickiness and allow you to throw that back into the top of the funnel for new marketing.
Scott?
Yeah, after you launch, you have to fix everything. And then from there, I'd say that it really comes down to a couple different things. One is maybe it's a new product feature you've launched, or maybe it's an entirely new product, but understanding who's using it and how and why, literally talking to customers, implementing qualitative type tools that allow you to talk to people, SurveyMonkey, et cetera. I think talking to customers in general is incredibly important, and especially after you launch something, that's a core part of what you need to do. But before you can really even do that, you obviously, I think it's focusing on all of the core metrics that you have defined before you launch, understand whether or not those are telling you what you think they should be telling you, are they different, why, and then sitting down and saying, all right, let's talk to these groups of users that for whatever reason, they either use it more effectively than we thought or don't, or they're not completing certain actions, and then using that information to help guide decision-making and focus areas and things like that across both marketing and product.
Great. Mark, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, so I agree a lot with what Scott said, surprisingly, because I don't usually do that. But data can tell you a lot about a product, and I agree you have to analyze all the data, but there's no substitution for actually talking to your users. So after we launched, I, with an intern and some other willing participants, called literally every single person that got an offer from us and didn't accept it. And then we called every single user that got an offer and did accept it and asked them why. We did cold call phone interviews, and surprisingly, people are pretty willing to talk to you, which was a nice surprise. And so, yeah, it's after launch is really learn as much as possible. We're doing a lot of in-app A/B testing and product optimization. But before you start running an A/B test, you need to understand why somebody didn't respond to what you showed them the first time and what they actually were looking for. And then once you understand that, it becomes a lot easier to kind of narrow the focus on what tests are going to make an impact when you can only run a handful of tests at a time.
Great. Well, that's all the questions that we have today. Thanks for your time, everybody, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.
All right.